Yeah, I don't have to. Okay, oh good, somebody else is coming, and I think that's Rose. Hi, how are you?
Hi, hello, I'm fine, thank you.
Hi, Rose. Thanks for coming on.
Hey.
All right,
Thank
great. You know, I know we had one more person who had RSVP'd, excellent, who I think is just joining us now.
Okay.
All right, and then you have a bunch of other people who are on, but they're on Zoom.
I think, because I'm having a problem with Zoom, so I think I'm on the phone this week.
Yep, you're on the phone, that's fine. You'll still be able to hear the material, and I can also send you the PowerPoint after.
That's very good.
Good.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who is on the, what's the name of the person with the phone number 9366?
No, oh, that is Rose Flores.
Yeah.
Rose, okay.
So at this point, I guess we'll get started, and if anybody else comes on, they come on. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, great. So, you know, I do want to thank everybody for coming on behalf of Seniors of Syosset NORC program here at the JCC, the Mid-Island YJCC, the Chinese American Association of Syosset, and the Nassau-Suffolk Law Services Committee. I would like to welcome everybody today for coming to this important and informative Zoom workshop. Please know that attendees are welcome to send questions in English or Chinese in the chat function on Zoom, or hold them to the end of the presentation. All questions will be answered after the presentation. You know, my name is Amy, and I'm the Associate NORC Director for Seniors of Syosset, and this is Corinne Fong, who is our Community Health Registered Nurse, who also will be acting as our Mandarin translator today. So at this time, I do want to introduce and welcome Daniel Okrent, Staff Attorney of the Senior Citizen Law Project at Nassau-Suffolk Law Services Committee, and thank him for coming to speak with us, as well as for, you know, our collaboration with CAS, with Nassau-Suffolk Law Services, and for Corinne to kindly translate for us. So at this time, I'd like to, you know, pass the baton on to Dan for this presentation.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Chinese American Association and the Mid-Island Y for hosting this. I think you're in for a interesting program. I appreciate your interest also. Next slide, please. So today we'll talk about a little bit about law services, to tell you about my agency, and we'll do some, we'll go into the basic estate planning, mainly wills, and then there are other advanced directives that are used. The healthcare proxy, the power of attorney, and the disposition of remains. Next slide, please.
Hello， 大家好。这个是 Dan， 他是我们的专业律师。我们今天的议程有以下几个部分。第一个是他们律师那个事务所有什么提供的服务，我们就他会具体跟我们等一下说一下。然后我们今天主要两个主要的重点会说遗嘱是怎么样规划，或者你可以someone has a question?
No, I think it's
back. 然后第二个就是我们的预先指示，包括医疗护理的委托书，还有医疗护理的授权书，还有最后是遗体的处置。大家听得明白吗？这样子用国语还可以 ？OK， 谢谢。
Should I go slower?
No, I think you're fine.
Okay. So I just want to say that I've been here for 25 years in this same position, and I love it. I love my job, and I love the people I help. Let me tell you a little bit about our agency. We are a nonprofit legal services agency. This means we're a law firm, but we don't charge for our services. We're here for people who cannot afford a private attorney. We have over 6,000 legal cases a year. That's probably up now because we hired some more attorneys. We have a total of 140 staff members, and probably 2/3 of those are attorneys. We provide direct representation, which means we actually accompany people to court or to a hearing. We also do a lot of phone consultations. So I'm calling people back constantly. I'm on the phone. I do that more than much more than the time I'm in court. In some cases, we just provide a brief service, a matter of hours or less. Sometimes we'll make a referral to another agency. So we have 3 offices, 2 big offices in Hempstead and one in Islandia in the central part of Suffolk County, and a tiny office in Riverhead to serve the East End. Our case handling staff includes attorneys, paralegals, and social workers. And we partner with a number of other community services agencies, such as Family and Children's Association, or FCA, Catholic Charities, and EAC, and other social service agencies. Next slide, please.
他们的律师事务所，每一年有超过6000个案件，他说可能现在比6000更多了。然后他们里面有140个员工，然后2/3都是律师。他们包括有直接代表，帮助那些法律的顾问，还有电话咨询。他说他大部分时间都是在做电话的咨询。然后还有短暂的服务，还有转介，假如有需要别的地方要他们转介的，他们可以帮助。他们在长岛总共有3个办公室，第一个在 Hampstead， 一个在
Islandia，
然后最后一个在 Riverhead， 他们总共有3个办公室。然后案件处理人有包括律师的助理，还有社工。他们还有跟其他社区的机构合作，他们是一个 non-profit， 就是帮助低收入的人关于法律的顾问案件这样。
So we are divided up into units or departments, depending on the area of law and also depending on the client population. So for example, these are some of the units that we have. I won't go into all of them, but I'm in the senior citizens unit, which is on your right at the top. Obviously, that's a unit by client population. We have many different law topics in our unit. We also have a civil unit, several eviction prevention units. If you're sued in an eviction proceeding, if your landlord takes you to court, we will be there for you. There's an adult care facility project, which deals with adult homes and assisted living facilities. If you have a mortgage or tax foreclosure, we have a foreclosure project for that. We have a veterans rights unit for U.S. military veterans, consumer debt. The people who have AIDS or HIV are served by a specialized unit. Behavioral health project used to be called our mental health law project. These are people who have a mental illness, are getting Social Security, they're getting SSI for a mental health diagnosis, or they've had recent psychiatric hospitalizations. We have our education and disability rights project. That's for elementary school students, usually, who have, they're developmentally disabled. And we help them and their parents vis-a-vis the school district. Finally, the Disability Advocacy Project, they handle Social Security disability and SSI appeals. SSI is a Social Security program which provides income supplements for those whose other benefits are too low to survive. So that's some of the types of, our public benefits unit does all things with the Department of Social Services. So that includes Medicaid, public assistance, emergency grants, food stamps. Okay. Next slide, please.
Oh, oops, hold on, sorry about that.
这是他们律师事务所有帮助到的提供的那个服务，其中最主要的是老年人的单位，它是帮助低收入老年人在Napa County 这里提供服务，然后还有其他的项目，包括那个艾滋病的项目，还有那个SSI 的上诉，就是那个低收入假如需要什么经济上的帮助啊，那些他们都可以帮忙。Education， 那你是教育跟残疾人的权利，他说主要是帮助那个有障碍的小学的学生和他们的家庭的帮助。还有退伍军人的权利，消费者的债务，对他们包括的项目挺多的。
Okay. Next slide.
Okay.
So what is a will? Okay, let's define it. A will is a document, a piece of paper, basically, that tells the world what you want done with all of your property, all of the things you own after you die. You want to translate each box because it's not, this is involved. Or do you want me to go over the whole slide?
Yeah, let's go one by one.
Okay.
Before I forget.
Or do I click?
Okay, next slide. Yeah. So 他说什么是遗嘱？遗嘱就是你对于一个人他过世以后，他有什么愿望，就是写在这个文件上面。
Okay, could you back? Yeah. And what is the purpose of a will? The purpose is to, as I said, let the world know and let your relatives know what you want done with your property after you die. You also get a chance to name an executor. This is the person who will carry out the terms of your will and be in charge of your affairs after you die. Go ahead.
他说遗嘱的目的是什么？就是想要你的亲戚或者你的亲人，知道你过世以后有什么愿望，对你的财产啊，那个管理有什么要吩咐他们要怎么样处理，还有就是要选一个 executive， 就是有一个指定一个人去帮你过世以后要怎么样处理你的身后事。
So why do we do a will? Well, first of all, if you don't have a will, your property will be distributed to your nearest relatives and equally. So that means that if you want to any of the money to go to charity, you need a will. If you want the money to go to anyone who's not your nearest relative, like a cousin or a friend, you need a will. If you want to leave money to your children not equally, in other words, more to one child than another, then you need a will. Go ahead.
那我们为什么要立遗嘱呢？就是假如你不立那个遗嘱的时候，他会将你的财产就平均的分配，但是假如你想，好像你有几个小孩，你想他们分的不是平均的分，要一个比另外一个多的话，那你就要立那个遗嘱来写清楚你是怎么样分配。
So what happens if I die without a will? Some people think that your money goes to the state, but that's not true. It'll go to your nearest living relative. So if you have parents but no spouse or children, it'll go to your parents. If you have a wife or husband, no children, it will go to the wife or husband. If you have children and you're widowed, then it will go to your children equally. And the law provides for if you don't have these close relatives, it provides for distribution to certain relatives like aunts and uncles, grandparents, nephews and nieces, cousins. But after a certain point, it stops. So it stops with your first cousin's children in New York State. But everyone has relatives. Very few people don't have relatives, so it will go to your nearest relatives. Go ahead.
假如你去世以后没有遗嘱的话，会怎么办？他说是按照你的亲属关系，首先会去你的父母，然后假如父母不在的话，就去你的先生或者你的妻子，然后假如没有先生或妻子，就会去到你的子女身上，子女就是会平均分配。然后假如什么都没有，只是有 cousin 的话，就是去到你的 first cousin 的 children， 然后就假如你都没有亲属的话，就是就这样就没有了。
So next question is, what are heirs and what are beneficiaries? Well, the difference is that heirs inherit your property because they're related by blood, okay? And if you don't have a will, those are the people who will get your property. Beneficiaries, on the other hand, are people named in the will who will get your property if you have a will. Go ahead.
OK， 继承人跟受益人有什么区别呢？继承人就是有血裔关系的，就是你的亲戚啊，或者你子女啊，或者你父母。但是 beneficiary 就是受益人，受益人就是你在那个遗嘱上面所立下的那个受益人的名字，他不需要有什么血裔的关系。
It is going slowly. I appreciate your patience. What is an estate? An estate is what you die with, okay, your property minus your debts, okay? When people use the term net worth, that's equivalent to one's estate, okay? Go ahead.
So 遗产就是你所拥有的所有的财产，然后减去你说就是你的假如你I went blank， 好像你他那个银行什么钱啊或者怎么样，就要扣除这一部分，然后所剩下的就是你的遗产。
Some people think they're too young to do a will. If you're over 21, you're not too young. I did my first will at age 32, and I've done a number of wills since then. So, we all hope to live till 90 or 100, but some of us are cut short. So you're never too young to do a will. Go ahead.
有些人我觉得自己太年轻还不需要立遗嘱。他说没有说是最年轻的，没有说是太年轻的，就是21岁以上的你都可以立你的遗嘱。而他自己本身就是32岁就是立了他自己第一份遗嘱。
Another myth, that people have is, I'm not ready to die. So I had a great uncle many years ago. I was only 19 years old, and he was a wealthy man, and he felt that if he wrote a will, that God will strike him down. God will make him die. And if he didn't write a will, he thought he would live forever, which is kind of silly. So he made a big mistake because in his case, there were estate taxes involved. But I want to tell you this, that about half the people who were in the cemeteries, half of them had no will and half of them had a will. So there's no evidence at all that writing a will, causes your death. I just want to clear that up. Take it next up. Go ahead.
他说没有说就是有些人有些误会，就是说我立了遗嘱就是要我准备要去世吗？然后他说在一半的那个墓地里面，有一半的人是没有立遗嘱的，一半是有立遗嘱的，所以 你有没有立遗嘱不会因此觉得你会很快会去世这样。
So many people think a will is about dying, but if you think about it, it's really more about taking care of your loved ones. It's more about your children or your grandchildren or your wife or husband or your nieces and nephews. It's not about your death. It's more about how they go on after your death. Go ahead.
他说很多人都觉得遗嘱就是关于死亡，但是其实是对你的亲人有一个就是帮助他们你去世以后会怎么样处理你的身后事，这是一个就是他到时候假如你去世了，然后他们会知道怎么样做，而不是遗嘱就是等于死亡。
When should you do a will? You should do it while you have all your faculties, all your marbles up here, because you'll need to know. Let me combine the next two slides. You'll need to know what you own, and you'll need to know who do I want to give it to. In other words, you have to be able to know what you have and able to form a plan of what you want it done with it.
你什么时候需要做那个遗嘱呢？就是你知道你自己拥有的什么，还有你是觉得要把它留给谁，然后你就可以这个就是一个好的时机去立你的遗嘱。
Now, you should also know what you owe, that is your debts, because there are different types of debts. Some of them are secured by real estate. For example, a mortgage. If you have a mortgage on your house, the mortgage will go with the house. If you have a car loan, the loan will go with the car. On the other hand, you may have credit card debts which are not secured by anything, by any collateral. And but your debts have to be paid first before anyone gets anything from your estate. Go ahead.
所以你的债务有包括你那个信用卡啊，或者其他你欠好像银行或者什么的财务债务，然后你偿还了所有的债务，然后所剩下的就是你的遗产。
I'll combine the next two. You also need to know what form of ownership the asset is in. For example, if it's just in your individual name, okay, then that asset will be affected by the will, be controlled by the will. But if the asset is in joint name, or if you have a beneficiary designation, then then that asset will go directly to the beneficiary. For example, if you have a life insurance policy with Cindy as a beneficiary, it's going to go directly to Cindy. All right. If you have a joint account with your wife or husband, it's going to go directly to your wife or husband, regardless of what the will says. If it says FBO, for benefit of, or in trust for, it's going to go directly to that person, regardless of what the will says. So so the will only affect things that are absolutely in your individual name with no conditions attached. Go ahead.
你的资产的拥有权，是假如是你个人拥有的话，你的遗嘱说你的遗产要去哪个人，他就全部都会去到那个人。但是假如你的你的资产或财产是两个人，或者你跟你先生啊，你跟你的妻子一起拥有的话，那就那个财产会直接去到你的妻子或者你的丈夫，不会去到那个受益人里面。
Next slide, please. So you don't have to be right or fair in your will. It just has to be what you want. Now, some people want to say leave more to one child than another. And there are reasons for doing this. For example, one child may be poor, another may be rich. One child you may have given a lot of money to during your lifetime, and not the other child. But be careful about that, because you can cause anger and resentment and family discord by doing that. So if you need to treat people differently or unequally, just have a good reason for doing so. Go ahead.
好以自己的遗嘱是表达你自己，你的遗嘱不需要是公平或正确的，它只是需要是你想要的，然后大多数人都会考虑到会不会那个受益人受到影响或者引起什么怨恨啊，只要你自己觉得有什么理由。给一个要分配给不公平的这样子，是你自己的意愿，或者是你以前已经觉得他那个一个小孩是比较穷的，一个小孩比较富有的话，那你可以按照你自己的意愿去分配不同的财产。
The next is the words in your will need to be crystal clear and free from any ambiguity. So when I write a will for someone, I just want to make sure that there's only one meaning to the word. That because if it can be interpreted in several ways, you won't be able to explain yourself because you'll be gone from this world. So some people draft their own will, but you should really have an attorney at law draft the will, or you could do a draft, but an attorney at law should look it over. Go ahead.
遗嘱上面的文字必须要清晰跟明确，就是说，因为到时候看你那个遗嘱的人，你已经不在了，你不可以再解释自己根本是想说什么的，所以你现在立遗嘱的时候必须要很清晰、很清楚。
The last is that you want to identify the people in your will specifically by the name, the relationship to you, and sometimes by their address. I also include middle names. So there may be 100 Cindy Lins in the world, okay? Or even in the United States. So if you have a particularly common name like Lee or Chang, make sure you mention that my daughter, Cindy Lin, okay? And maybe you have a friend that has a common name, say a John Smith. And which John Smith in the country do you mean? So you may want to say my friend John Smith, and his address is this. Go ahead.
他说每个人的名字通常都要最好是说明他是你跟他有什么关系，或者是他的地址住在哪里。然后因为很多人同名同姓，所以最好就是清楚的说明是哪一个人这样。
Next slide, please. So it's fine to think about your will. Think about and plan for the future, but your will should be the best it can be, even if you die next month, God forbid. You can always do a new will if circumstances change. So don't worry too much about whether the will is good for next year, next week, next year. Just make it the best you can be in case something happens next month. There's some considerations, okay? You want to think of like, what if a person named in my will predeceases me? That means dies before me. What if they all die before me? Now, most people don't want to consider the possibility that their wife or husband and their children will all die before them. But for the will, we need to consider that remote possibility. And also, what if my executor, that's the person who's in charge of my will, my estate, dies or becomes disabled and can't go on, can't do the job of executive? Do I have an alternate executor in mind? And you want to always provide for alternate beneficiaries and alternate executors, especially if the people you name are near your age or older. Try to choose younger people if at all possible. Go ahead.
他说计划将来是很好的，即使你下个月不幸的去世，然后你的遗嘱还是已经草拟好了，然后还有假如你觉得那个将来很多的变化，你也可以随时 改正你的遗嘱，然后草拟那个遗嘱的时候，还有你要想到的就是，假如我遗嘱里面指定的人比我先去世怎么办？或者他们那个遗嘱的人执行的人突然间去世啊，或者有什么疾病啊，无法帮你履行那个任务又怎么办？这些都是你可以提前计划好的。最好是有一个后备的人，就是有一个后备的受益人，有一个后备的执行人。假如他们跟你的年龄相近的话，有这个后备的人，那你就有多一个选择。但是如果可以的话，最好选择相对比你年轻的人会比较好。
Next slide, please. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Just want to talk about a couple of things. You don't need to be an accountant or a CPA like I was before I became a lawyer to be an executor. But if you have a person who really hates numbers or is not good with numbers, choose someone else, okay? Because there are will be a lot of numbers for the executor to work with. As far as choosing in-state people versus out-of-state, it used to be that the courts preferred in-state executors. That's really no longer the case with modern communications that we have today, email, fax, telephone, FaceTime. You can be in California and be an executor for a New York will. Always ask beforehand if the person is willing to serve as executor and let them know, okay? Some people don't do that courtesy, and it's no one should be surprised that they're an executor of your estate. Go ahead.
选择你的执行人，就是要选一个值得信赖的、有负责任的、有条理的，最好是对那个数字比较敏感的。假如你觉得他数字能力不这么好的，你就应该不要选他。然后他说在州内或州外现在不是很重要，因为现在的科技很发达，可能就是一个 email 啊或者怎么样都可以找到他们，所以就这个没什么大关系。然后还有事先要咨询一下他愿不愿意履行这个职责。然后最主要的就是这个立遗嘱的人去世之前，这个执行人是没有权利的。
Next slide, please. So in New York State, a will has to be witnessed by two people. When you come to my office for a will, or if you do, we usually will provide the two witnesses, and most attorneys will do that. If you're at home, we often have to have, if you're homebound and at home, we often have to have neighbors or friends come over to witness the will. There's two things I'm going to mention about, how two things are important when you're doing a will. One is how you draft it, how it's written. The second thing is how it's witnessed and how it's signed and executed. So although it's not legally required, you should have a licensed attorney in your state supervise the execution of your will. And I always do that for the wills that I do. The witnesses should not be in the will in any way. They should be completely independent. And witnesses have two responsibilities. One is to watch the testator, the person whose will it is, sign the will, and they must be satisfied that the person was competent and not under any undue influence or pressure or restraint. Go ahead.
所有的遗嘱在纽约州都需要2名的见证人，然后避免将来对你的遗嘱的执行产生有什么任何的争议啊，或者其他什么对，最好是在那个纽约州或者你所在的州有一个职业的律师来监督你遗嘱的执行，然后你的见证人 它是需要那个遗嘱里面不可以在里面就是不可以是受益人、受托人或者执行人，他只是你的见证人，是必须完全独立的，还有公正的。然后见证人他在见证他签遗嘱的时候，必须确定那个签遗嘱的人是不受到任何的限制或者胁迫啊，或者什么威逼之类的。
Okay, next slide, please. I'm just going to make a few short points. The reason why we don't want to put your will in a safe deposit box is that at your death, it's usually sealed by the bank, and then you'll need a court order to get it open. Even if you're the husband or wife, some banks will let a husband or wife or the joint holder of the box open it, and some won't. The other thing is, and this is very important, don't unstaple your will or mark it up. Okay, if it needs to be revised, have your lawyer do a new will. And when you make a new will, you want to destroy all old wills, so they're not confused with the new will. It's always the last will that counts, and that's why it's called a last will and testament. So I can make 42 wills during my lifetime, but it's the latest will that will count. Go ahead.
他说最好不要把你的遗嘱放到银行的保险箱里面，因为通常一个人去世以后，他需要一个那个法庭的order 才可以把那个保险箱给打开，所以就有些时候还不可以打开，所以这个地方他不建议放在里面。然后他说不要泄露你的那个遗嘱的副本。假如有什么更改的话，就是会造成不必要的困扰。然后假如你想对你的遗嘱有什么更改，最好是找一位律师帮你重新立一份新的遗嘱，把所有旧的遗嘱都要撕掉啊、毁掉啊、碎掉这样子。然后在你立下新的遗嘱的时候，就旧的就不要再就要销毁它。
Next slide, please. You could just look at this slide yourself. It's pretty self-explanatory. These are some of the circumstances in which you would want your review and revise your will. And that will do it for wills.
然后这个就你可以自己读一下，这是审查你的遗嘱有什么需要需要确定的问题。
Okay, next slide, please. So there are other advanced directives that we use, and one is the healthcare proxy, which is a very simple document. It allows someone as your agent to make healthcare decisions for you in case you're unable to make them yourself, such as if you have dementia, if you have a stroke, any other thing which renders you unable to direct your own healthcare. For financial and business and many other matters, we have the durable power of attorney, which I'll talk about also. And finally, we have a little known document, which is a New York State form, and it's called Appointment of Agent to Control Disposition of Remains. And basically, you can name an agent to determine where your body goes and what happens to it after your death. And particularly useful in case there are conflicts or disputes about, where you want it to be buried, or maybe you didn't want to be buried at all. Go ahead.
下一个题目就是说到预立的指示，然后分为三种。第一个是医疗的护理委托书，然后就是说你假如突然得了重病，不可以帮自己 选择什么的医疗的护理的话，你会有这个委托书，会告诉你的亲人或者医生要怎么样处理，就是要不要接受医疗的服务这样子。然后医疗护理的授权书就是你会授权给你的家人或者朋友哪一位帮你决定你的医疗的程序这样子。然后最后的是遗体处置，就是你过世以后，你的遗体你将来想怎么样安葬的话，就是从这个里面可以写清楚。
Amy, I made a mistake. Could you advance the slide once and then again for the Chinese, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
And I mean where it says healthcare proxy, and then the English and then the Chinese, and I'll be right back.
Okay. You want me to go forward then to healthcare proxy?
Forward, yes.
Okay. Okay. While we wait, as a reminder, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to write them in English or in Chinese in the Zoom chat, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the presentation.
You know, this subject matter may be kind of depressing for our community, but it is, I think, a very necessary and educational topic that I think family members should be very, very, I guess, concerned with, especially, I mean, a lot of the parents and our parents, grandparents may not want to talk about this subject because then I mean, nobody wants to talk about their mortality, right? It's a very depressing topic. But I think as caregivers, especially when we have elderly parents and grandparents that we love and care about, this is something that has to be addressed at some point. And it's best, as Dan had mentioned, when our loved ones are clear-minded and they can, you know, really communicate what their wishes are, as opposed to when it's too late and in the hospital and everybody is emotionally not prepared for what may happen next. And when our loved ones are heavily medicated and can't really make decisions. So a subject matter like this is important. So it's but yes, but kind of depressing.
Yeah.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, we're back. No, thank you. Some people do find it depressing, but it's something we need to deal with, and we don't need to dwell on it. But, you know, just for the purposes of doing these documents, I want you to understand what they are and what they're about. Yeah, you made some very good points. So I had no, there's no time for a story. So let's go on with the healthcare proxy. This is a very good document because you basically are appointing someone with a brain who knows what your wishes are or would be. And they can make healthcare decisions for you that are appropriate to your circumstances. So I highly recommend it. I can do one in 15 minutes. Many hospitals will not release under the HIPAA law, the Health Insurance Portability and Privacy Act. They will not release information even to a wife or husband about their spouse's medical treatment. So it's good to have a healthcare proxy, if only for that purpose. There's also a provision on there to donate organs or tissues. You have the same, I think, option on your driver's license. There's other ways, but to donate organs or tissues, but they do have a provision for that on the healthcare proxy. Last thing is, many people think the healthcare proxy is only for life-saving or life-sustaining treatment, like respirators and feeding tubes. So it does cover respirators and feeding tubes, but it also covers any medical treatment. So that could be bandages, that could be surgery, antibiotics. So it includes all that. Go ahead.
这个医疗的委托，护理委托书是每个人都有权利，拒绝任何的医疗，那个假如果有一个人失去知觉啊、丧失能力啊，或者无法做出决定，他就不可能拒绝医疗了。但是假如你有这个委托书，他会只是包括所有的类型的治疗，不仅仅是维持生命的治疗。他说好像有什么手术啊，还有那个维生素啊，你想怎么样的治疗方法，你可以写清楚在这个医疗的委托书里面，那就可以你的身边的人会知道怎么样帮你处理，假如你没有这个能力的时候。就医疗而言，拒绝或者终止治疗意味着什么？就是假如你那个好像你中风啊或者怎么样的时候，你就没有自己的能力去告诉你的医生啊或者他的团队你要怎么样去治疗你。然后假如有这份委托书的话，你就可以清清楚楚说你是要放弃治疗啊，还是要继续治疗，就是你还有自己的权利，还有自己的控制能力去帮自己做出你想要的决定。
Okay, next slide, please. Oh, did we skip one? I think we skipped one.
You had told me to go ahead to healthcare proxy. Do you need me to go backwards?
Just back one, yeah.
Okay.
So in English, yeah. No, go ahead one.
Okay. So this was healthcare proxy. So this is the next slide. Unless you want me to go ahead another one.
That's okay. I think we're missing a slide, but I'll just say that
Was this
there's a couple things you can do with the healthcare proxy. You can ask the medical staff to withhold a treatment. For example, do not put him on a respirator, or do not give her antibiotics. That's withholding medical treatment. You could also withdraw it. So sometimes it might be appropriate to say, we don't want her on the respirator anymore. Turn it off, or withdraw the feeding tube. All right. That's what withdraw means. In other words, withhold means we don't do it in the first place. Withdraw means that it's on, and let's discontinue that treatment. Okay. There's also, I just want to explain the difference between a healthcare proxy and a DNR order, or do not resuscitate order. So the healthcare proxy covers all situations, all healthcare situations. The DNR only applies when one's breathing has stopped or when the heart has stopped, or both. No other situation. You can go ahead.
就是这个委托书，它可以帮你决定医疗上，假如你想暂时不用其中一种的医疗那个设备，或者你是好像本来你有那个生命的维持器，然后你想把它好像那些人说应该是叫拔喉，就是你不想再继续依赖那个生命器去维持你的生命。假如你有这个healthcare proxy 这个医疗的委托书，你就有这样一个就是说清楚你是想怎么样的医疗的设备。然后DNR 就是假如你不能呼吸，或者你的心脏停顿了，然后或者两种的情况一起发生的话，它是这个叫do not resuscitate， 就是不会帮你用那个机器会延续你的生命这样。
Okay, the only thing I want to mention on this slide is that it's important that the witnesses not be agents or alternate agents in the healthcare proxy. Just like you would not have anyone in the will be a witness to the will, you should not have either the agent or the alternate agent. I'm sorry, you should not have a witness be an agent or alternate agent. You can go ahead.
就是签署这个医疗护理委托书的那个见证人，就是像之前你的遗嘱那样，不可以是那个执行人去做你的见证人，因为你不想有什么conflict， 所以最好是2个18岁以上的见证人，不需要公证人或者地保官的，只是2个见证人就可以了。
You could change next slide, please. Okay, the first one is self-explanatory. Telephone number is important because you'll need to make a decision maybe within an hour or a few hours. So a letter will not cut it. You'll need to have the agent's phone number. You never want to appoint 2 co-agents to serve at the same time in a healthcare proxy. You want to appoint an alternate agent instead. The reason for that is if one says, turn the respirator on, and another says, turn the respirator off, we're deadlocked, right? We're nowhere. So 1 agent at a time on the healthcare proxy. You want to give your copies of your healthcare proxy to your agent and alternate agent. Why? Because if they don't know where it is and they don't have a copy, it's not going to be much good, okay? So feel free to distribute copies of your healthcare proxy. You know, give it to your doctor, give it to the hospital or nursing home, if and when you're admitted to the nursing home. And just as importantly, you need to tell your agent and your alternate agent what your wishes are in these circumstances. They can only carry out your wishes if they know what they are. So in addition to naming them as agent, tell them how you feel about respirators and feeding tubes and under what circumstances you might want these things withheld or withdrawn. Go ahead.
提供那个代理人或者后备代理人最新而且正确的联系信息，最好是一个电话号码，因为通常在这里这个生死的关头，一个电话就会很快找到你的答案。那个好像信啊或者写信去就太长，时间太长了。然后而且你的那个代理人是其中指定一个人去帮你委托那个委托书的指定一个人，你不想2个同时有那个权利，因为2个假如不同的说法，你就很难说得清楚。然后你最好每一个那个代理人都有一份副本给他们，还有你进去医院或者疗养院的时候也有一个副本，然后就大家都有一个清晰的版本，你是怎么样讲你的医疗护理。然后你要提前跟你的代理人还有你的后备的代理人说你的意愿，只要他们清楚知道你的意愿，他们才可以帮你履行你的意愿。
Okay, next slide, please. So we're done talking about the healthcare proxy. Let's talk about a different document called durable power of attorney. The durable power of attorney is a very flexible, but a long and complicated document, okay? And what does it do? It enables you to appoint an agent to manage your financial, business, and your personal affairs if you are unable to do so, okay? And it also authorizes your agent to sign her name or his name where your signature would otherwise be required. Like what? Okay, so they might be able to sign, you might authorize them to sign for your banking transactions and deposits, withdrawals, transfers of money, retirement benefits. They could handle things at Social Security or your pension, take care of your goods, sell your goods if need be, wind up your apartment, you know, any number of financial and business transactions. There's a whole laundry list on the form. You can provide for 2 agents to serve at a time. You could provide for alternate agents. You could say that the agents are going to be paid or not paid. Multitude of flexibility and contingencies. So I just want to explain what these terms mean. The word attorney in this situation means an attorney in the classical sense of the law, that is an agent or representative. So you don't have to be an attorney at law to be an agent on a durable power of attorney. You just have to be, an adult. What does durable mean? Well, durable means that something lasts. In this case, it lasts through one's incapacity or disability. So if I do a power of attorney today, and most people agree I'm competent, it's going to go into effect today, but it's going to continue to be in effect even if I do get dementia or I do have a stroke or I'm unconscious, okay, and I can't handle my affairs. It's going to continue to be in effect. Go ahead.
这个永久的授权书，是当你无法做决定的时候，你指定的代理人，可以帮你管理的财务、业务或者其他的事务，并授权你的代理人在需要你签名的地方签署他的名字。他刚才提到有好像你那个银行的转换啊，或者怎么样，他可以签他的名字，或者你的退休计划，或者你的 Social Security 也可以，他帮你签他的名字，或者他要售卖你的那些财产，他也可以帮你签名，然后在授权是那个 attorney， 就是那个你的授权的人，他不一定要是一个律师，只要他是成年人就可以了。然后durable 就是他永久的意思，就是他现在立了这个授权书，但是有一天他变成了有那个没有办法想跟人家说他是怎么样的意愿的时候，这个授权书是永久有那个
So next slide, please.
Okay.
One of the problems with the power of attorney, at least in New York State, has been that some banks and brokerage firms, that is financial institutions, won't accept the power of attorney that the attorney wrote and that you signed, and they want you to use their own form. So it used to be that Merrill Lynch had their own form and Bank of America had their form, but what if the person could no longer execute a new power of attorney? That was a problem. So there was a lot of disputes between the lawyers and the financial institutions, and like, how can we get the financial institutions to accept these powers of attorney and without requiring their own reforms? And how can the lawyers satisfy the financial institutions that they're going to be acceptable? And how can the attorneys be assured that the financial institutions will accept the power of attorney? So there was a big powwow a few years ago, and they hammered this out, and they have a procedure that if financial institutions, that is banks or brokerage firm, want to contest the validity of a POA, there are certain procedures and timeframes to do so, so that the person, the client, is not held up indefinitely. Second, when you choose an agent, choose someone you trust, because they'll be able to have power over everything you own, so just make sure you trust that. Some powers of attorney have been abused, the agents have been dishonest or unknowing, and we've referred some people to the district attorney's office for larceny or embezzlement. So just choose a person you know for a long time and who you trust. Another point is, if you're agent on a power of attorney, always sign your own name, not the principal's name. So if I have given, I'm going to pick on Corinne. If I have given Corinne a power of attorney and appointed her as agent, then Corinne signs Corinne as agent for Daniel, okay? She doesn't sign mine, she doesn't sign Daniel because that would be what? Forgery. And finally, like the healthcare proxy, the power of attorney is not valid after the principal's death. The only thing that would be valid is the will. Go ahead.
就永久
So sorry, I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
OK 永久的那个授权书有几样以下的几个重要的提示，就是那个法律规定金融机构必须接受符合法定要求的 POA， 就是假如金融机构想质疑那个POA 的有效性，它有一个特定的程序，然后你必须要那个 POA 的签名必须要经过公证，然后选择你的那个代理人的时候，一定要选一个你可以信任的人，因为这个 POA 有可能会被滥用，然后信用的那个人也可以就是全代表你去做任何事情，所以你一定要选一个你很信任或者认识很久的人，然后那个代理人签署文件的时候，就是要签名他自己的名字，不是签名那个委托人的名字，就是好像我选了 Amy 做代表人，Amy 是写 Amy 自己的名字，不是写我自己的名字，然后委托人去世以后，那个授权书会自动无效。
Okay, next slide, please. So when you do a power of attorney, don't try to do it yourself. Always have an attorney at law. I strongly recommend it for both the drafting of it, the writing of it, and also the signing and witnessing. And I just want to tell you a little bit about why. First of all, as attorneys, we have a responsibility to make sure that the person is competent, is mentally competent, and understanding what they're signing. Responsible attorneys, we don't let a person who is no longer competent to sign a power of attorney. It's a very complicated and important legal document. We also explain what some of the terms mean in the power of attorney or POA. We also will advise on the selection of powers to be given to the agent. So most of the time we want the powers to be broad, because the one power you didn't give the attorney, such as the ability to sell your home, may be the one power that they need. But some people just want a very limited power of attorney, such as something just for banking transactions, for example. And we'll do that, but it's tailored to the individual and their needs. Finally, some people in the past have asked for a power of attorney form, and when I was young and inexperienced, I provided it. But it was a mistake because we found out that people could not properly fill out the form, okay? Or it wasn't witnessed, or if they forgot to initial here and sign there. So we don't do that anymore. If someone wants a power of attorney, we do it ourselves. We do the whole job. So we want to make sure that the power of attorney is properly drafted and properly executed. There was a new power of attorney law that went into effect in June of 21. I can't believe it's been 2 years, over 2 years since then. But be assured that if you have an old power of attorney that was signed and executed before that date, it's going to continue to be in effect. Those old powers of attorney are grandfathered in. Go ahead.
还有以下几点的重要提示就是，他们强烈建议由专业的律师来草拟跟执行那个永久的授权书。是为什么呢？因为他们律师会会确保那个 POA 上面的委托人在精神上还有有能力的理解，然后清楚的签他的名字，因为这是一份很重要的法律文件。还有那个律师还会帮你清楚的解释 POA 里面的内容跟含义，还有给那个代理人的权利有什么提供的建议，这些都是你的律师会提醒你， 所以有一个专业律师草拟的话，还有执行的话就比较确定一下，然后还有
So let's see the last slide. And I'll tell you about the appointment of agent to control disposition of remains. So this is something that many attorneys don't even know about. The funeral homes know about it, and this is a little macabre, so bear with me. So as I say, sometimes there's a disagreement as to where, or misunderstandings of where one wants to be buried. I remember I just had my aunt die, and everyone thought she was going to be buried in Chicago. But shortly before her death, she said, you know, I want to be buried with my first husband on Long Island. So I'm glad they straightened that out. And of course, there was no disagreements about it. Sometimes you have a, say, a homosexual couple, and the gay person knows where, you know, the person wants to be buried, or where their remains are going to be, how their remains are going to be disposed of. And the parents of that person have a different idea. Or two siblings, for example, you know, may have disagreement. So if there is that kind of thing in your family, you may want to think about this document. And basically, just like similar to the healthcare proxy or the power of attorney, where you appoint an agent who has final authority to determine what happens after your death, whether it's burial, whole body burial, cremation and burial, put your ashes in a church columbarium or mausoleum, whole body, you know, mausoleum can be whole body or cremated remains. They have some newer things, which I won't go into, you know, today, about disposing one's body. But this is a, you know, good form. And you could say, you know, I have a reservation in this cemetery. I want to be buried in this cemetery on my family plot, you know. And so you could just make sure that people know exactly what you want done with your remains after death. For example, my parents, you know, wished to be buried at sea. Their cremated remains be buried at sea, and my father wanted his ashes dropped from an airplane because he was in the Navy and he flew planes for sport. And then when it came to my mother, she said, you know, you don't have to drop me from an airplane. You can just take a boat and, you know, and drop my remains, cremated remains, that is, directly in the water, which we did. So many choices there, and just you have to think about it once and then forget it. Go ahead.
然后我们最后一个议题是说到遗体的处置。在纽约州任命代理人决定遗体处置的表格是比较鲜为人知的，就是不是很多人知道，但是这个文件可以帮你指定一个代理人，然后这个代理人会拥有追踪的权利来决定你去世以后你的遗体是怎么样处置。或者你的家里的人有什么分歧，他刚才说到有一个好像同性恋，你的同性恋那个爱人可能会知道你的意愿是怎么样，但是你可能没有跟你的父母说，然后就当你去世了之后，那两方面会有什么不同的意见，所以有这个文件就比较好表达你过世以后你想怎么样处理你的遗址。还有那个这个文件还可以帮你提供具体说明说你要怎么样埋葬啊，或者是火葬啊，还有你的埋葬的地点啊，葬礼的安排啊。好像他说他的父母，他爸爸是在Navy 的话，他想他的骨灰从那个飞机上洒下来，但是他妈妈就说我不想在飞机上面，因为我想在海里面，所以他父母的两个不同的意愿，只要有了这个遗体处置的这个表格，就会清楚说明你想怎么样处理之后的遗体。
Thank you, Corinne. That was wonderful. We're very good on time right now. Can I answer any questions you have about the topics we talked about?
有什么问题？大家
Yes, I'm happy to unmute people if they have questions.
Yes, I have a question then.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I have, I have an only child and he is my sole heir and beneficiary,
Mhm.
can I make him my executor, the agent for my healthcare proxy, and the agent for my durable power of attorney and disposition of remains?
Yes, everything.
Everything? Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
you could
much.
be an executor and a beneficiary in the will.
Beautiful.
And
Thank you.
And many people choose the same agent. You may
Yes.
want to, as I say, you may want to name an alternate agent in case, God
Yes, of
forbid,
course. Yes, I
it
will.
never happened, that something happens to him before you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anyone
Dan,
else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So these directives, and the forms, are they state specific?
Yeah, they are. Well, a will, I guess it's not state specific, but
Right.
each state has different requirements, for a will. So some, states may require 3 witnesses, or some
Oh.
states may, or a will in one state may be legal in another state, but not ideal, So, but definitely the healthcare proxy and the durable power of attorney are state specific. There's, New York forms for that. And the disposition remains definitely a New York form. Yeah.
Well, the reason why I ask is, for
Yeah.
example, I moved from New York to Florida and,
Right.
and of course brought my mother-in-law with me. Obviously, we did kind of change things, for example, healthcare proxy, and we, had documents redone here in Florida, but I mean, they were actually the same. The documents were just, okay, for
Very similar.
Florida, they were
Yeah.
very similar. Like the questions and
Yeah.
everything like that were very, very similar.
Mhm.
In Florida, for example, they call it it's a yellow document, okay? And so when you go to hospitals, doctor's office, things like that, they're like, okay, you have a healthcare proxy document, you have a, with DNR and all that stuff like that. It's yellow. And so that's what they ask for. They don't ask for anything because it has to be yellow.
So they won't accept a New York or other document prepared out of state?
They didn't say they didn't accept it, but they were like, if you had one from another state, they were like, well, then it has to, be redone in the yellow form. Like you have to,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
the
so,
form. The questions were exactly the same. It was the color of the form.
right. Yeah, that's a little much, that color makes a difference. I disagree. But I always tell, seriously, I always tell people, if you move to another state, check with a lawyer in that state to see if, the forms you executed in New York are still good, and are still wise. Most of the time, these documents will be acceptable in another state, the healthcare proxy certainly, most, maybe a little less so the durable power of attorney, but the will definitely, I would definitely run it by a Florida lawyer and to see if it meets all the requirements of Florida law. Because now there are some lawyers who are members of the bar in both states, New York and Florida. And we have them here in Nassau County, New York, and probably in Florida too, some people who are members of the New York and Florida bars, but I'm not, So I really don't know. We're usually lawyers of one state or two at most. So, you know what I'm saying? So just not to be repetitive, but I think many of the documents that I draft here in New York will be valid in other states, but it's best to check, yeah. Anything else?
Hi, Dan, I have another question.
Okay.
I am confused. I don't know if I should do a simple will or a trust. I know it's totally different.
Right. Well, many people will have both. You need a will anyway. You may want to do a trust as well. We don't do
Okay.
trusts here, we only do simple wills.
Oh,
So, there are different types of trusts. There are testamentary trusts, which basically are trusts that are included in the will, the trust that springs into action when the person dies.
okay.
There are also living trusts or inter vivos trusts, that is between the living people, that you can set up now, for, and to be a trust for your child or nephew or whatever. Usually, most of the people that I serve are pretty low income, pretty low asset, and if they have a lot of money, that is hundreds of thousands or millions, I will, strongly urge them to go to a private attorney. But what can I say about trusts? But trusts are, because the trusts are such a complicated subject, and even the seminars I've gone to, the people who really do trusts said, don't dabble in this area. Don't just, yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, so if you're looking to set up trusts, they're very personal to the individual, you should see a private attorney,
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. No questions? Gotta be some questions.
讲中文的还有没有其他问题吗？我可以帮你们翻译。
Say again?
No, I was gonna translate it for people who speak Chinese.
Oh, yeah,
If they-
go ahead. Yeah, let's.
But it seems like nobody have any questions.
Dan, I do have a question. Are we allowed after the presentation to email the PowerPoint out to people so they can read, or is that, strictly your property? So we should
No,
not.
you can do that. I'm not, particular about that. Yeah, you can email the PowerPoint.
Okay. I figure in case
Sure.
anybody missed a point, they can go back to refer to the PowerPoint.
Right.
And
And you could also, you can call or email me with questions too. My email address is dokrent. That's DOKRENT at NSLS, which stands for Nassau Suffolk Law Services .legal. So from the top, it's dokrent, as if it were one word, at
Yep,
NSLS.legal. Go ahead.
And I put that in the chat, and I will also email that out to everybody who RSVP'd through email.
Right.
And if you do not, please write your full name and your email in the chat, and I'm happy to send you everything.
Was there anything else in the chat?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna translate for the Chinese.
Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Okay. 假如你们没有RSVP 这个项目的话，可以把你们的名字写一下在那个打字的地方吗？
That's it? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're just gonna check the chat to see if anybody else wrote anything. But, I do want to thank everybody for coming and for spending the hour with us. I thank you, Dan, for presenting, and for you, Corinne, for translating. And please know, again, I will send out the PowerPoint along with Dan's contact information to everybody who RSVP'd through email. And we hope perhaps in the future we can collaborate again to do another workshop.
You bet.
Thank you
Really
so much.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Public
Dan.
helpful, and
Amy.
thank you all for,
Thank you. Thank you so
Very
much
good
for coming.
presentation.
my
Thank
Thank
pleasure.
you, Dan. Thank you,
Thank you.
Corinne. Great
Much.
translations.
Oh, thank you. I tried.
And also,
I
I did
wouldn't know. You can judge the translation. I can't.
I also can see if I could send the recording of this Zoom as well, because I did record this, so that way if people want to look back, they can as well. So,
Super.
we have resources available.
Beautiful.
I think
May?
everybody,
Did you learn anything new?
Oh, I did
Yes.
learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
The doable, right?
Okay. Good.
Okay. Let me give you the phone number for the seniors unit. As direct as I can make it. It's 516-292-80 8088.
Can you repeat that one more time for me?
Yes, 516 area code,
Uh-huh,
292
okay.
8088.
Okay, and I'm also putting that in the chat as well. And again, I will put that in email.
Right,
Wonderful.
very good. This
Thank
was
you.
great. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I hope it was clear, and
Absolutely.
Yes.
This was great information.
take care.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. Have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Okay.
You bet.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.